know if you've noticed this, but there is a documentary available at Netflix right now. It's about Harry and Meghan. I don't know if you've heard of this. A Prince Harry and a Meghan Markle. Yeah, I know. Let's have a chat about this right now with Chris Shipp, who's the ITV Royal News Editor. Chris, what a subject, what a time, and we've still got a book to come at the start of January. Now, can I just get your, as a bloke who can get into every detail of this, when you're sitting there across the 3 hours, are you rolling your eyes or are you sort of saying, nah, they're clever here because they're doing this, that and the other? What was the emotional response from the bloke who knows what he's talking about?
You know, to be honest with you, a bit of both. And I'll admit to watching it on, I didn't know you could do this on Netflix. You can watch it on 1.5 times speed, which means you can get through the 3 hours in more quickly than 3 hours. And if you've got subtitles there. But then I was kind of under pressure on Thursday morning, writing notes, people asking me what was the best bits, etc. I still think, though, that the worst is yet to come from the Netflix documentary for the royal family. Paul, I'm sure you're much looking forward to the next 3 episodes, numbers 4, 5 and 6, which come out this Thursday, 8 a.m. UK time, midnight on the Pacific coast. I think there's more to come, worse to come, and the royal family got away rather lightly, shall we say, from those first 3 episodes.
Well, we all know when it comes to Star Wars, episodes 1, 2 and 3, yeah, okay. The real game, 4, 5 and 6. The Empire Strikes Back, but then there's the return of the Meghan. I don't know what's going to happen. Or the revenge of the Meghan, we'll see. So, again, I think that this show is about talking to America because that's why sort of part of the show is about educating about the royal family and slavery. It's about educating about the way the media works. It's about It feels to me like if your main source of information outside of the internet is what's on Netflix, Netflix and chill, have a look around. If you're a person who only watches documentaries and doesn't read a book, this is all designed for those people, and it's a very American audience, isn't it?
I mean, you could say the same thing about The Crown. I mean, where are you getting your information from? And if you're only getting it from The Crown, then, for example, well, you're missing big chunks of history, and they've rewritten some of the Queen's famous speeches, like that famous Annus Horribilis one in 1991, which they just completely made it up in The Crown. Netflix, I mean, as far as Harry and Meghan are concerned, let's remember this was their version of events. This wasn't a balanced documentary looking at both sides of the argument. This was Harry and Meghan talking, and a lot of their friends talking, and a lot of their business associates talking, all from Harry and Meghan's point of view. That said, I did think the programme did make quite an interesting observation, I think, and a very valid observation about Britain and its past and how every country is the product of its past. And when it comes to colonialism and, yes, empire, and crucially, slavery as well, yes, I think, there are a lot of things about Britain, the riches that we got in this country off the back of slaves, 300 years ago. So that was quite an interesting argument they made. Harry and Meghan didn't make it. It was other contributors to the programme that made it. From that point of view, I thought it was very interesting. But was it balanced? Was it a sort of, let's look at both sides of the argument? Absolutely not. This was Harry and Meghan's story.
Also, just from the media perspective, it seems that the PTSD from media intrusion is greater on Harry than the PTSD of going to serve in Afghanistan, where presumably life might have been taken or he saw life being lost. Now, I've got to say, if I felt sympathy, I understood that when anyone's lost a parent young, you're always afraid that it's going to repeat itself because it's the greatest tragedy of your life. I understand about the media intrusion stuff, but it seems like any person who's been sort of damaged or bruised, that maybe he was trying to look for a bigger flow chart of abuse than actually exists.
No, I think there's a serious point to be made here and a more light-hearted point. Let me just make the serious point first. That is, yes, I think, Harry is a very damaged person. He's spoken before about when he flies back into London, he used to get that sort of attack of nerves, and the PTSD came on because he was so miserable with his life here. And a lot of people might say, how can you be miserable? You're in the royal family, you've got everything you possibly want. But as we all know, it's a gilded cage, and I think a lot of us wouldn't swap our own lives for the one that he's had. And actually, he made an interesting point in the documentary when he said that he didn't get the support and guidance he should have had after his mother died. That's quite a damning verdict on his father's support post the death of Princess Diana. on a lighter point, and you talk about this sort of privacy thing, I mean, there's been some articles over here when people have written about, will you stop invading our privacy? Every time I sort of look up in the newspapers, I see Harry and Meghan. Every time I turn on Netflix, Harry and Meghan. Every time I look at any news coverage, Harry and Meghan. And, you know, some people are saying, well, at what point do you sort of, you know, you turn away from the royal family? Yes, you decided to leave it and you were perfectly entitled to do so. But at what point do you start looking forward rather than always looking back and making money? Let's be clear here. Netflix are paying Harry and Meghan a lot of money. Penguin Random House, the book publisher, is paying Harry a lot of money for the book, all based on their previous life, the one they didn't like, the one they left behind. And all of this, the book, the Netflix and everything else, is about the past, not the future.
So some of the reaction to it, pretty full on, including MPs who basically say to them, please don't come back even for the coronation, even when your father, well, he's already king, but, you know, formal ceremonies and all the rest of it, don't even bother coming back for that. There's, of course, the bill that's being discussed about getting rid of titles. There's a lot of smoke, a lot of aggro, but do you think anything actually changes in terms of whether he comes back?
Look, well, put it this way: Prince Andrew still has the dukedom of York, and given everything that happened there, I can't see that you could remove Harry and Meghan's for writing a book and going on Netflix and not remove Prince Andrew's. Although, you know, legally he's done nothing wrong, but he's obviously damaged his reputation and that of the royal family as well. So yes, that debate is going on about their future, but you know. As I say, I mean, at what point do we get Harry and Meghan 2.0? You know, what is their future? How will they go on? This life of service they talk about. Well, at the moment, all the publicity is about their past life, about their time in the royal family, how miserable they were. Look, and I don't think for a second it was very nice. Could the royal family have been more welcoming to Meghan? Well, yeah, probably they could. You know, but then Meghan's, you know, making big sweeping generalizations about Brits, saying that we don't like hugging because, you know, that's very jarring for Brits, she said, when she went to hug William and Kate. Well, do you know what? You can't write off an entire nation on the basis of Kate and William weren't very huggy. So, you know, I just think there's a real cultural conflict here between Britain and America, not just between class. You know, there's all the talk about race, you know, and the point was made in the documentary that a lot of the negative coverage was all about race. I think a lot of it, to be fair to you, comes down to a cultural clash between Meghan, the person that she was, an ambitious actress and, you know, businesswoman and philanthropist, and the royal family, which was very much like stuck in its way and we're not sure we like this change and we've got this hierarchy, the Queen comes first and then it's Charles and Camilla and then it's William and Kate. Actually, Harry and Meghan, you're after all those. And those two traditions and cultures just clashed and it was never going to work.
Well, also, you know, put it this way about LA and being from LA and wanting to get involved in showbiz in LA, that's literally an entire sort of mining town that is all about attention. It's all about attention. Whereas Buckingham Palace and the royal family, it's an institution that gets attention by virtue of the free press that's around it, and they've had to work out how to handle it, and as they've learned how to handle it, they've learned how to shape it. But again, that's I think part of the culture clash as well, that okay, if you're a person who's come up in sort of, you know, kissy cocktail party world versus you know, royal service world, that's a different type of human being. And surprise, surprise, there'd be people in our own country you don't hug on the first date.
Yeah, and do you know what? The Queen was the most famous woman in the world, and yet she never courted any publicity at all. And as you rightly say, I mean, the whole of Hollywood is based around how do I get photographers to come to this event? How do they snap me on the red carpet? How do I get in the magazines and get all over Instagram? And the royal family is entirely different kind of culture. And, you know, you won't be surprised that Buckingham Palace hasn't responded to any of the claims made so far in the Netflix documentary, including some actually quite serious ones. Harry saying that his family's got a problem of unconscious racial bias. He wasn't calling them racist, but he says, you know, they do suffer from unconscious bias. Buckingham Palace hasn't responded to any of it, and they say they don't intend to respond to any of it and will carry on doing things through deeds rather than words. And, for example, on the very day that Harry and Meghan put out their documentary, or the first 3 episodes last Thursday, Prince Charles was at a very diverse Ethiopian church in the King's Cross area of London, kind of getting on with the day job, as it were. That's okay. That might go down well in the UK, but I think in America, let's be clear. I think Harry and Meghan are winning the media war, as it were, and that for Harry and Meghan is the important bit, because that's where their future finances are going to come from, and they're kind of winning that battle in the US, I think.
So last one here is that all of us remember the change that followed Diana's death, where there was this line in the sand, or it felt like there was this line in the sand about the use of paparazzi, the chasing of royal figures. Fast forward to 2022. Do you feel any seismic change that is happening in and around what's been revealed, what they're lying about, the sheer volume of coverage? Do you feel that, while not as tragic, that this is another one of those moments where in 10 years you're going to look back as a bloke who does this for a living and see when it changed?
Look, I think Harry and Meghan were a sort of change. It was a significant moment, the entry and the exit of Harry and Meghan, and no one's kind of left the royal family in that kind of way, perhaps not since 1936 when King Edward VIII abdicated. And I know Harry wasn't monarch, of course, but it was a very, very big schism in the royal family when they decided to leave, as they did in 2020. The thing about the press coverage is that I've stood in plenty of media pens there at the invitation of Harry and Meghan's office to cover events that they're there for, as have all the other camera crews that have been there and all the photographers as well. Never seen people chasing Harry and Meghan down the street, or leaping out of bushes and hedgerows. I mean, I haven't quite seen that. I know it kind of happens. And actually, interestingly, in the Netflix documentary, they were being chased by a paparazzi member whilst in the US, because you could see the sort of yellow taxis behind them. So it's not just a UK problem, this. The paparazzi is a problem across the world. I do think, however, that we have a kind of contract with the royal family now, which is, look, we will show you Prince George and Princess Charlotte going to school on their first day, which they did, incidentally, I think a day before the Queen died. And after that, don't take any pictures. If you're offered any pictures, don't publish them, and don't go anywhere near the school. And nobody does. And I think that's a huge difference to what Diana suffered in the 1990s. I think we are in a much better place than we were before. What has changed now is the toxicity of social media and how anyone can take to a keyboard and say whatever they like. That's a big change. And I think that's part of what Harry and Meghan are suffering from. And when they talk about the media, are they talking about just the tabloid newspapers? Are they talking about broadcasters, or are they talking about the whole of social media? And it's such a big world out there at the moment. But I think there has been some huge changes since Diana suffered that terrible abuse and hounding at the hands of paparazzi photographers in the 80s and 90s.
Well, Chris, enjoy A New Hope, enjoy Empire Strikes Back, enjoy Jedi.
3 more to
later
come,
this
and
week.
then a book.
Yeah, and then a book, and then all the rest of it. You have one hell of a winter in front of you. All the best, mate. Nice to talk to you. Look forward to talking to you soon.